What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Where Is. I hope everyone is having an amazing day. So, today I wanted to discuss 3 different cases that all possibly could be linked together, and that is the mysterious disappearances of Jennifer Barton, Debra Stewart, and Brenda Moore. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So, the first case we will be discussing is the case of Jennifer Barton. Jennifer Joyce Barton was born on May 31st in 1955 and was just 20 years old when she went missing from Austin, Texas. She was raised in a upper middle class family and was said to be well behaved as a child growing up. At the time, Jennifer was a high school student at Reagan High School. However, she did end up dropping out of high school during her senior year, and she began dating a man who was a known pimp and drug dealer. Now, I'm not sure where Jennifer met him, but he did end up going to prison, and after this, Jennifer had actually began using drugs and also began working the streets. Now, in February of 1976, which is 3 months prior to Jennifer's disappearance, her pimp was murdered in a robbery that had gone bad at a hotel in Austin. Now, there were rumors going around town that Jennifer had actually set him up and that she was afraid that his friends would end up coming after her. Now, shortly after her pimp was murdered, Jennifer's apartment had been broken into and had also been vandalized. There were vulgar words and pictures that had been painted in red on the walls, and strangely, a pair of her underwear had been pinned to the wall with the word blood written on the wall near her underwear. But police were unable to determine if the murder of her pimp and the break-in at her apartment had anything to do with her disappearance. So, now that you have a bit of backstory on Jennifer, let's go ahead and jump into her disappearance. So, the date was May 16th in 1976, and Jennifer, along with one of her friends, decided that they wanted to see a movie that night, so they headed to their local movie theater. Now, Jennifer was a bit short on cash, so she had stopped at a bar that was in the area of East 11th Street and Waller Street to see if she could get some extra money. Now, while she is at the bar, she meets 2 men there and she begins talking with them, and she ends up spending about 30 minutes having a conversation with them. Now, one of the men was described to be African American, 5'4" with a thin build, and was wearing a sailor's cap and a t-shirt. The other man was also African American, was 5'6" with a heavy build and had a large afro. Now, Jennifer had told her friend that the 2 men had offered her $25 if she would be intimate with them. So Jennifer does make the decision to go with them, so they head off and make their way out of the bar. Now, strangely, when leaving the bar, the 2 men leave out of 2 different doors. One of the men had left out of the back door, and the other man went out the front door, and he gets into a large van that was described to be brown or tan. Now, the van had a large whip antenna, teardrop-shaped side windows, a spare wheel on the back, and the van had California license plates. Now, I'm not sure why they got into the van at different times and left the bar at different entrances. Maybe they didn't want people seeing them leaving together. Now, one of Jennifer's friends was actually walking down the street at the same time, and they saw the van head around the block and make its way back up the street. Now, her friend decided to take a peek inside the van. However, she didn't see Jennifer, and unfortunately, Jennifer has never been seen again. Now, it has been reported that Jennifer had made comments about wanting to go to California. Now, the police did end up searching for her in the Los Angeles area, but unfortunately, they were unable to locate her. Now, she does have a history of robbery, assault, and working on the streets. However, she has not been arrested since she disappeared, which again was on May 16th in 1976. Now, Jennifer is considered endangered and foul play is suspected to be involved in her case. Again, Jennifer was only 20 years old at the time of her disappearance. She is African American with brown hair and brown eyes and has a light freckled complexion. She has a scar on the calf of her right leg and has pierced ears. She was last seen wearing a burgundy bodysuit, blue jeans, and sandals. At the time, she stood at 5'7" in height and weighed 135 pounds. If alive, Jennifer would be 66 years old. Now, what's strange is that two other young women who were also African American disappeared from Austin, Texas around the same time, so could all three cases be connected? Now, one of the other women who disappeared was Debra Stewart. Deborah K. Stewart was born on September 5th in 1956 and was 19 years old when she went missing from Austin, Texas. She was a sophomore at the University of Texas and was studying communications. She was working a part-time job at her local Sears located at the Hancock Center that was located near Hyde Park in Austin. Now, on May 21st in 1976, Deborah was working a shift at Sears that day, and according to her coworkers, she hadn't been feeling well and decided to leave work early. So she leaves her job to head to a doctor's appointment at the Student Health Center on campus. However, she never ends up making it there, and this would be the last known sighting of Deborah. Now, police had found her car abandoned in the 1800 block of Ferdinand Street, located in East Austin, which was only about a mile away from her apartment, and her keys were still in the ignition. However, there had not been any signs of foul play in or around her car. It's also reported that her apartment, which was located in the 2700 block of Manor Road, was left perfectly clean and none of her belongings had been missing. Now, witnesses had reportedly seen an African American man that was about 5'9" to 5'10" in height and about 190 pounds getting out of the vehicle. He was described to have had short hair and was neatly dressed with a long sleeve button-down shirt and dark-colored pants. Now, Deborah did have a boyfriend at the time of her disappearance. However, police were never able to find anything to link him to her disappearance. Investigators did search Deborah's home and everything for the most part appeared to be in place and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Now, police do suspect foul play to be involved. However, her case still does remain unsolved. Again, Deborah was 19 at the time of her disappearance. She is African American and was last seen wearing blue jeans with patches, a blue long sleeve blouse with white stitching, a blue bandana, a wide belt, and brown shoes. Now, the other young woman who disappeared around the same time as Jennifer and Deborah was Brenda Moore. Now, there isn't a ton of information on Brenda. However, we do know that she was 20 years old when she went missing from Austin, Texas on March 7th of 1976, shortly before Jennifer disappeared. She was last seen by coworkers on March 7th around 3:15 p.m. on the east side of Austin. Now, on March 12th, her car was found by her coworkers Abandoned in the 1900 block of Coletto Street, which was less than a block away from where Deborah's car was located. And do you remember how Deborah's keys were still in the ignition after her vehicle was located? Well, Brenda's keys were still in her car as well. Now, it's reported that Brenda was married at the time of her disappearance. However, her and her husband had been separated for almost 4 months. Now, Brenda did have a boyfriend at the time who drove a blue Chevrolet pickup truck. Now, according to her husband, he had actually thought that Brenda had left town with another man. Again, there isn't a ton of information on Brenda's case. However, her case does still remain unsolved. So, just a quick timeline. Brenda went missing on March 7th of 1976, and her car was found abandoned with her keys still inside. Jennifer went missing on May 16th of 1976 and was last seen leaving the bar near East 11th Street and Waller Street. And Deborah was last seen leaving work on May 21st, again in 1976. Now, after Deborah's disappearance is when police started to notice the comparisons between all 3 cases. Now, Jennifer quite often frequented the 11th Street area, as well as Deborah, and they both actually had some of the same friends and acquaintances. And we know that Brenda's car was found less than a block away from where Deborah's car was found, so what on earth could have happened to all 3 women? Do you guys think that all 3 cases are linked to each other, or do you believe that these cases are all just separate cases? If you have any information on either case, you can contact the Austin Police Department at 512-974-5210. Well, that is it for me today, you guys. As always, please stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.